Good morning, listeners. Britt here with 91 FM Public Affairs. Today for you, we've got Shaka joining us all the way from Detroit. We're going to be talking about his two books called Crack Volume 1, also Soaking Wet, as well as his publishing company, Drop a Gem, which he started while he was incarcerated for 19 years. Shaka, why don't you start off telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm very excited. I'm really looking forward to coming out to the campus in Wisconsin, Platteville. My name is, as you said, Shaka, and I'm an author, mentor, a motivational speaker, publisher, and, I got my start with my business while I was actually incarcerated.
When I read that, I thought that was really cool because so many times when people are incarcerated, as you said, you can go so many different ways. You kind of come to a fork in the road, and I think the way you decided to take that while you were incarcerated was awesome. When you were incarcerated, how did you get the motivation to even start?
Well, one of the things was I really had to do a lot of soul searching while I was in there. I went to prison at a very young age. I was 1 month into my 19th birthday. Like a lot of, young men in my community, I got caught up in the streets, caught up in the drug culture. And, that led to me going to prison, which I eventually served 19 years. And, growing up, I was always like an honor roll scholarship student, so I knew I had the intelligence. And it was really just about correcting some of the ways that I thought about life. And I just realized, I didn't want to come out another statistic. I didn't want to just come out a broken person. And I felt like I had so much more to offer to myself as well as to the community. And so I began the long journey of turning my life around.
How were you able to find the resources while you were incarcerated to even start?
It's very difficult. You really have to be driven to go above and beyond in order to accomplish anything in that environment. It's a very violent, very volatile, very miserable environment, and so you really have to find different ways to carve out the mental space to accomplish anything of work. And so what I did is I really immersed myself in reading. They do have libraries in there. Now they censor a lot of stuff now, but back then, I was able to access a lot of, very informative books, very inspiring books. And in the process of doing that, it just began to help me mold my thinking. But as far as the writing part, I would write on anything I can get my hands on. Stationery from the store, prison stationery, the back of envelopes, whatever I could get my hands on. Whenever I felt compelled to write, I would just write.
Now, you had such a positive attitude, I know, towards the end of your sentence, but towards the beginning of the sentence, you had a totally different mindset.
Oh, yeah. I was very bitter, very angry. I was very disappointed with the life choices I made that led me to prison. And I was basically like one of the most rebellious prisoners probably to come through the Michigan Department of Corrections at the time. And I kind of became like a prison yard legend because of some of my exploits. And ultimately what ended up occurring is that 8 years into my prison sentence, I actually caught another case while in prison and ended up serving 4.5 years of solitary confinement.
Wow.
And during that time, that's when I really just had to take a step back and really just take, a different look at my life.
Now, you started reading while you were in solitary confinement, and that was, as I've seen the way you've kind of explained that was allowing you to escape and kind of give you freedom while you were locked up. So how did you decide to go from reading to saying, you know what, I think I want to start my own publishing company?
Well, actually, I didn't start off with the idea of starting a publishing company. I just started off with the idea of I want to really write I just really want to get these stories out. And what happened is, prior to solitary confinement, I had written a couple of articles for some of the little prison newspapers and some college newspapers or whatever, but I really wasn't taking writing serious because it was just something that came to me kind of naturally. And so when I really began to write like full novels, initially I was just doing it. I was in the hole. I'm like, well, this is something the guys can read that's different, that's more reflective of their reality, but also that has some socially, politically, and culturally redeeming qualities about it. And I had no idea how I was going to get my work out. I had no idea about the publishing industry itself and how difficult it is to really get your work out to people. And so, I'm just thinking, okay, well, since I wrote a book, I'm going to send it to a publisher. They're going to read it. It's good, and they're going to publish it. But it just really doesn't work like that. And I found that out the hard way. But what I realized is also that, as an artist, the worst thing is to have somebody censor your work for commercial purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, let me step back for a minute and look at some of the other people who are actually out here doing it. And I began to learn a lot about the publishing industry. And so I would order information, have different people send me information, and I just began to teach myself the things I needed to know in order to start my own company. And it just blossomed from there.
Now, you write for a specific genre that a lot of us aren't familiar with, and you call it street lit.
Yeah, well, it's kind of, one of the things I'm very careful with that terminology because, unfortunately, there's so many people that has flooded the streets with what's considered street lit,
mm-hmm.
and a lot of it is poorly written and poorly edited, and so it kind of gives a bad name to those of us who write in that particular genre. But what I write is considered conscious street lit because one of the things is, people are always trying to marginalize anybody who doesn't do it the conventional or the commercial route. And so, we've been tagged with the label street lit, but the thing is, it's just stories written in the urban landscape. You know what I'm saying? And it really deals with things that is reflective of, it's more closer to reality than most fiction, but it's still fiction. And so, for me, I just see the urban landscape as the canvas upon which I choose to paint these vivid stories, but the messages are universal in scope, and the characters are readily identifiable no matter where you come from. And it's something in every book that I write that everybody, whether you're white, black, from the hood, from suburban America, from the farm, that you can identify with. Because at the end of the day, we are all bound by our humanity. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
What I want over here in Detroit is probably the same thing you want in Wisconsin, Platteville, which is to have a successful career, a family to call my own, a nice home to come home to. And so we're not that different at the end of the day.
Now, do you think your writing is kind of like a new, trendier, trying to get a little bit more youth excited about writing and reading? Is helpful?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. When I initially I was going to write something more political, more intellectual, but I understand the importance of literacy as it relates to expanding our consciousness and really, open up our mind to the possibilities that exist in the world. And so I definitely believe that being able to write in a way that attracts younger people to read, I think that's one of the greatest gifts that you can give to the literary world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because like now, the response I've had from